Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. À quel point est-ce que la Constitution permet au gouvernement
the Constitution enables the federal government to impose a province that was against a pipeline project, like Mr. Kenny was saying yesterday? I believe that we understand that the federal government always has the duty of making sure that the national interest is protected, and the projects that are going through different provinces are the responsibility of the federal government, because there's no province that can control what happens in another province. At the same time, it's really important to make sure to fill the first role of a federal government, which is to see the national interests and making sure that the unity of the country is not threatened. That has always been my greatest priority, and that's why we are putting in place a process, contrary to the Conservative government in the past, that understands that the responsibility, the environmental responsibility and consultation with local communities, including partnerships with the Indigenous people, is an essential fashion to go up in the right way in a project. So you would be with similar projects with Energy East. On the contrary, as we said, we will analyze every project that is brought forth. Right now, there are no projects of a pipeline to the east of Canada. If ever there's a project that comes forth, we will look at it in a responsible fashion, respecting the process we've put in place.
In English and French, if you please. How can you reassure potential buyers that they're not just buying a lawsuit, that they are buying a pipeline, given that in BC you've got a government that still wants to know if you guys can just impede on provincial jurisdiction, in their words, and you've already got another lawsuit filed by 6 First Nations earlier this week?
Well, we understand the concerns that investors have had around political risk. Indeed, those concerns have been prevalent for a good decade now, and has led to underinvestment in Canada's natural resource sector. And the root cause of that is, as you say, the fact that court challenges and court cases have impeded the construction of projects, even projects that have been approved by governments, because the courts have found that the approval process in different cases has been lacking. So an international investor wanting to make investment, being reassured that the government can approve something, but not knowing that that approval is actually going to stand against local courts, is a significant break on investment. That's what people saw across Canada over the past decade, where the federal government under the Conservatives made a choice to move forward on projects by ignoring environmental concerns and marginalizing Indigenous voices. Well, that was a recipe for getting bogged down in the courts, because the government wasn't fulfilling its responsibilities. So when we took office in 2015, we made a very different choice. We said, no, the way to get big projects built is to engage with Indigenous communities as potential partners, and is to do the environmental protection that all Canadians, including Albertans, expect around big projects. We did that. The Federal Court of Appeal said you need to go even further on that, and that's what we did. When the Federal Court of Appeal came back with its ruling in August, conservative politicians all had the same answer. You've got to fight this in the courts. You need to appeal that decision. You need to change the law. We knew that was a mistake. We knew that instead, we need to change the processes and actually work with Indigenous peoples, actually work with environmental concerns. If conservative politicians had had their way and we had appealed the Federal Court of Appeal's decision, this summer the only people be working would be lawyers in courts, instead of these folks behind me, instead of folks putting shovels in the ground later this construction season. We know that the world has changed, and governments need to be responsible on the environment and responsible with Indigenous peoples and community support in order to move forward. Now, that doesn't mean we expect or have to get unanimity on this, But it does mean we have to make sure we're doing the process right. That's what we've done, and that's why we're confident that having fulfilled the blueprint that the Federal Court of Appeals laid out for moving forward on Trans Mountain, that we are doing this the right way, and we are going to get that pipeline built to new markets in the right way. Nous comprenons que la façon d'avancer
we understand that the way to go forward in projects is to do it in the right way, while protecting the environment and create partnerships with the indigenous people. That's what the Conservative government did not understand for 10 years and continue to not understand, because they insist that we need to go forth and while not listening, while not worrying about the preoccupations of citizens, of Canadians, of Indigenous people. So what we're doing is that we're demonstrating that the certitude with investors, they will have it when they know that the processes created by governments, if they follow them, they can be sure that they won't be in courts in a few months after or in a few years after with an interrupted project. It is our approach. It is the right approach for Canada in the 21st century.
Thank you again in English and French, please. You and your new star candidate in Quebec, Stephen Guilbeault, have agreed to disagree when it comes to the Trans Mountain, evidently. Now, he's pretty vocally anti-pipeline, has made a career out of it as an environmentalist. How much of a voice will he be when it comes to weighing in on future other energy or pipeline projects?
We are a government that understands that Canadians have a broad range of views on a lot of different issues. And one of the important things for us is to make sure that we are listening to the voices of Canadians, to the preoccupations of Canadians. And that's why we have a great and diverse team that we're building that have strong perspectives and strong opinions on what to say. But we've also been very, very clear as a government in buying the pipeline, in moving forward with the pipeline in the right way, that we believe in getting our resources to new markets and investing those profits in a cleaner energy future. And that is something that all Canadians can understand and all Canadians can get behind. And that is what we're going to continue to stay focused on as we make sure that hardworking Canadians today can continue to put food on their table for kids who will have good jobs and a protected environment as they become adults, as they grow up. That is the path we are on, and in order to get on that path, we need to make sure we're gathering together voices from all different perspectives across the country. Nous savons
We know that Canadians themselves have many opinions and many different opinions on the big projects, on the big issues. And that's why, as a party, I want to gather people from many different perspectives who are ready to go forth together in the right way for Canada. We know that, and we've demonstrated as government, we know that it's important to reach new markets for our oil resources. We know also that there is much work to do to ensure a better future for our children and our grandchildren in a world that is changing. That's why, by gathering people who know how to work together to reach a better future for all Canadians, has always been a strength of the Liberal Party of Canada.
Canadian Press. I'm going to switch gears a bit to China. It's been 6 months, as professional and capable as our diplomats in China no doubt are. What are the reasons why we don't yet have a permanent ambassador?
I think, first of all, we know that we're in a challenging situation with China. And as a government, we have consistently stood up both for the rule of law and for Canadians. We are very concerned with the 2 Canadians being unjustly held in China right now, and we have expressed that to the Chinese, including at the highest levels in direct conversations that I had face-to-face with the Chinese president. We have, as you say, excellent diplomatic representation in China who are doing an outstanding job. And we are making sure that we're moving forward in the right way, in a way that is going to both protect Canadians, uphold the rule of law, and keep a path forward for our economy and our investments. Getting that balance right is something that we're taking very seriously.
And how should Canadians think of John McCallum's term there in light of his recent comments that the foreign minister has disavowed?
The foreign minister addressed yesterday the comments by Mr. McCallum. The focus of this government has always been on standing up for Canadian interests, standing up for the Canadians who are being unfairly detained, and standing up for the rule of law. We will be unflinching about that in our communications, both public and private, as a government, because that is the path to both defending Canada's interests and defending the Canadians that are unjustly held.
Conservatives have already called this, in other words, blatant campaigning on the public dime, not making an announcement here today, just kind of re-announcing the construction. I guess first your response to that.
I think this is an issue that has been preoccupying Albertans for an awfully long time. The fact that successive governments, the Conservative government for 10 years, and our government over the past years, have been working very, very hard to get our resources to new markets. And that we were able to make a determination to move forward on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion last June. A few weeks ago was very important, but it was also really important for me to come out and make that announcement here in Alberta. It's really important to me as Prime Minister that I be saying the same things right across the country. And coming out here to talk about not just the pipeline expansion, but our need to have a serious plan to fight climate change is something that all Canadians need to hear. We have Conservative politicians trying to pretend that there's still a choice between the economy and the environment, and demonstrating that they are not serious about actually moving forward on the greatest challenge of our time, fighting climate change. It is important that the Prime Minister be here to remind Canadians that we do not have to pit one corner of the country against each other, that families here in Alberta want to see a cleaner, greener future for their kids at the same time as they need to keep putting food on their table for their families. And that we are a government that understands both of those things and are going to stay focused on that unequivocally. And unfortunately, Conservative politicians are choosing to play a high degree of politics, including bringing up threats to national unity, which we categorically reject. All Canadians right across the country want to see us move forward with a growing economy that protects the future of our kids and grandkids. And that's exactly what we are doing, because that's what Canadians, including Albertans, expect us to do. And I'm going to keep talking about that right up and right through this upcoming election. Je pense que les gens savent que c'est important.
I believe that people know that it's important that their Prime Minister be present across the country. They say and says the same thing everywhere he goes across the country. I'm here to re-announce and to underline the fact that we are going forth with the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline in the right way. And I'm also here to underline that it takes concrete actions and a real plan to get our Paris targets and protect the future generations. It is the responsibility of the Prime Minister to gather Canadians around this, and the fact that Conservative politicians are wanting to divide the country and invent threats to national unity, I think it is completely irresponsible. We know that Canadians from sea to sea don't want to choose between the environment and the economy. They know that the right way, the only way to build a healthy economy for the years coming is also by protecting the environment in the same time. It is exactly what I'm doing, and I will continue doing as a Prime Minister.
The premiers met in Saskatoon this week, but before that meeting, there was a block of Conservatives premiers met in Calgary this week. They're plotting against the federal Liberals in this campaign and talking about ways to defeat your government. How is that going to impact your strategy through this election campaign cycle?
Well, I think one of the things that we've seen from Conservative premiers across the country is that they are unwilling to invest in the infrastructure needed by their communities for political reasons. You know, Doug Ford and others have been dragging their feet on working with the federal government that has put forward significant amounts of money for infrastructure projects, and they would rather have their citizens suffer by not taking advantage of this construction season than stand on stage to make an announcement with the federal government. That kind of petty politics that hurts citizens right across the country is an example of the kinds of politics that, unfortunately, Conservative premiers are beginning to play. We will continue to be there as partners for our cities, and I have to highlight that the collaboration that I've gotten here from Mayor Iveson and in Calgary with Mayor Nenshi on big infrastructure projects has been outstanding, and it's unfortunate that the Premier's office has not been as rapid on highlighting the infrastructure projects that it wants to see us move forward with. There are lots of great infrastructure projects that we've already launched across Alberta over these past years. We want to continue to do that because that is what is needed by Albertans, particularly given the difficult years that they've had. So it would be wonderful for the premiers to stop playing divisive politics and actually work collaboratively on the investments we want to make in their provinces. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.